Namaskar viewers, hello and welcome to Sansad TV. I'm Tina Jha, you're watching Perspective. On the show today, we turn to Bangladesh, which is once again on the edge, with tensions flaring after a landmark and deeply polarising verdict against former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. On Monday, 17th November, the International Crimes Tribunal of Bangladesh sentenced the former Prime Minister to death, finding her guilty of crimes against humanity linked to the 2024 student protests that ultimately brought down her government and forced her to flee the country. In its 453-page judgment, the tribunal held Sheikh Hasina and two co-accused responsible for allowing the use of lethal force on protesters and also failing to prevent atrocities during July's unrest back in 2024. So all 5 charges were upheld. Sheikh Hasina and former Home Minister Asaduzzaman Kamal received death sentences, while former police chief Chowdhury Abdullah Al-Mamun was given a 5-year term. Now, the ousted leader has rejected the verdict, of course, calling it politically motivated. She said in a statement released soon after the judgment, and I quote her, "Verdicts announced against me were made by a rigged tribunal established and presided over by an unelected government with no democratic mandate. I was given no fair chance to defend myself in court. I'm not afraid to face my accusers in a proper tribunal where evidence can be weighed, tested fairly." That's what Sheikh Hasina's statement said soon after the verdict was given. Protests by Awami League supporters also broke out in parts of Dhaka soon after, and Bangladesh's Home Ministry formally urged India to extradite Sheikh Hasina, calling it New Delhi's legal obligation under the bilateral extradition treaty. India's Ministry of External Affairs has responded cautiously, saying India remains committed to the best interests of the people of Bangladesh in peace, democracy, inclusion and stability, and will engage constructively with all stakeholders. So what happens next? What exactly does the India-Bangladesh extradition treaty provide for? And crucially, what are the exceptions, particularly for offences of a political nature? That's what has been making headlines. So we'll try and understand from our experts the legal, political and diplomatic dimensions of this unfolding development on the program today. For this, we are pleased to welcome on the program today Ambassador Veena Sikri. She's been India's High Commissioner to Bangladesh earlier. Ambassador, glad to have you with us on the telecast. And we're also joined by Dr. Dhrupjyoti Bhattacharjee. He's a Senior Research Fellow at ICWA. Dr. Bhattacharjee, thank you so much for joining us on the program as well. Ambassador, to you first. I heard you on one of the discussions yesterday, soon after the verdict. And one thing that stayed with me was you described this verdict as inevitable. So I'll take it from there. As someone who's observed Bangladesh's politics over decades, you've served in the country as well. Would you say it's the continuation of long-standing political rivalries, perhaps taking a new shape? Or is it a completely different sort of a political dimension taking place in our neighborhood?
The verdict itself and the process by which the verdict has been delivered does smack very strongly of vendetta, and the vendetta is against former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, especially if you look at the way in which the regime change operation was conducted last year, backed by external powers with Pakistan as the conduit and Jamaat-e-Islami as the conduit for Pakistan in Bangladesh, as it has been always, even prior to 1971. So the whole idea was that now that Sheikh Hasina has left the country, the idea seems to be to get rid of her support base, to get rid of any chance of her ever coming back to Bangladesh, to make sure that the Awami League no longer remains a factor in the political process and elections in Bangladesh. I say this because the Awami League in that sense represents or embodies the values of the liberation war of 1971 and the values of secularism, of democracy, of social justice and nationalism. And these are the four major planks of the Bangladesh constitution. And these are the four major planks on which the liberation war was fought. The then East Pakistan opposed what West Pakistan was doing in Bangladesh. They were, bringing more and more religiosity. They had even banned, Rabindranath Tagore's works and music and writings. And, they were oppressing the Awami League purely on the basis of its being a a party which believed in secularism, in democracy and nationalism and social justice. So this is an old history, and I think Pakistan, the way in which they acted as the conduit and what they are doing in Bangladesh today, unleashing the Jamaat-e-Islami, unleashing the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed in Bangladesh, trying to embed themselves, trying to embed Pakistan military officers with the Bangladesh army, trying to create tension along the borders between India and Bangladesh. In fact, destroying the spirit of economic cooperation that had been built up between India and Bangladesh, which has always been there. The people of Bangladesh, the people of India have shared common values for a very long time. The people of Bangladesh are certainly religious. Radicalization is certainly taking place. Every effort is being done by the Jamaat-e-Islami to increase radicalization. But I think the fact is that the people of Bangladesh do not want Sharia law. They do not want a radicalized Bangladesh. They believe they're religious. They believe in their own religion, but they don't want Sharia law in any way. Now, all this coming together is what has happened in the way in which the trial was conducted. The very first thing I want to say is that why was the ICT, the International Crimes Tribunal, used for holding the trial against Sheikh Hasina? The ICT was set up under a Parliament Act in 1973 to try those who were guilty of war crimes during the 1971 Liberation War. And it's been working under that parliamentary mandate of 1973. People have been tried, their sentences have been executed. But how could the Yunus regime think that they had the authority to decide that the ICT would conduct this trial? This is the whole point, because the Yunus regime, as you have said yourself from that statement of Sheikh Hasina, is not a constitutionally elected government. It's a government which came into place at the end of a regime change operation. And even if you assume that a caretaker government can exist in Bangladesh, as used to be earlier in the constitution, but not in the present constitution on which they have sworn their allegiance. Even if you assume that the caretaker government can be there, then that caretaker government has to be there only for 90 days and only for conducting elections, and not to take any decisions of a major kind except observation of law and order. So when the Yunus regime is violating every condition of its existence, and then bringing in reforms, bringing in a July National Charter, trying to see that all this comes into the constitution before the elections, which of course hasn't happened because the presidential order says that the elections and the referendum will take place on the same day. So all this is creating a feeling of high politicization, a vendetta against Sheikh Hasina, and a determination to keep all democratic forces out of Bangladesh and to bring in a radicalized religious regimen in Bangladesh. We've seen that.
You're right, Ambassador. You've covered a lot of ground in explaining to us comprehensively about the current political landscape in Bangladesh and the alignments between the civil, the military forces as well in the country, in the manner in which the government of Sheikh Hasina, an elected government, was overthrown, but also the manner in which radicalization has happened. But I'll come and understand from you also about the current state of dilemma that India currently is in, given the extradition treaty that we have with Bangladesh, but also some of the exceptions that exist and that perhaps will give India more time to think over what to do. Next, we'll cover that in the next round. Let me bring in Dr. Bhattacharjee also into the discussion. Dr. Bhattacharjee, from where Ambassador left at, what is your assessment on who stands to gain the most from this tribunal's verdict against Sheikh Hasina? Is this also, do you also think this is about settling scores, rebalancing power within Dhaka, or is it altogether consolidating a new political order? What is your view?
The main thing is, I just wanted to, as I agree to most of what Ambassador Sikri had said, I want to basically recall one thing, that the South Asian Bengal memory is always marred by violence, especially post-partition. It is mostly marred by violence, political violence mostly. And what we have seen, that even during the Dhanmundi revolution, when Bangabandhu was killed or assassinated, and post the usurpation of Sheikh Hasina, when they wanted to blur the memory of the liberation war. And presently what is taking place is now they're basically trying Sheikh Hasina, as Ambassador Sikri said, on the Indian War Tribunal. Like what is happening is everybody's nobody is basically gaining a trump card, or nobody is getting a winning point. Everybody's, even the people in Bangladesh is not winning. Those in Awami League, those in BNP, or those, it is just basically finding some legitimacy in some space, which, like the interim government, which is totally illegitimate, which is not an unelected government, and it is trying to basically extend its time of legitimacy and stay within the prime of government, and create foreign policy as per the whims and fancies of the dictators that they're listening to. So, who is benefiting out of this? It is very difficult to check that if people at the ground level, if even if it is in Bangladesh, or even if it is in West Bengal and or in India, if somebody is benefiting out of it, it is very difficult to say, because you practically, when you practically without any legal representation, you award a death sentence to an elected representative who has been usurped, uh, and to the daughter of the father of a father of a nation. That becomes a little bit of a problem, because the situations might be different when Sheikh Hasina was in power. There might be authoritarian strain of rule. There might be corruption in the government, but they have mechanisms to be taken care of, and a death sentence is not the right way to be taken. Death sentence is not the right way to basically run the country or lead a country into the next direction. And
You're right,
one
and
thing, what I would,
that speaks a lot about the internal dynamics at play within the country, as Ambassador also rightly highlighted. Coming now to the extradition treaty and the legal dimensions, and particularly because it relates to India, we saw a statement. We played out that statement from the Ministry of External Affairs, which was in response to the verdict, and it was released soon after the verdict was pronounced. But Ambassador, we'll try and understand more deeply from you about this treaty that India and Bangladesh have. It contains clear exceptions as well. One of the articles talks about some of the offences of political character, or where the accused risks persecution. These fall under exceptions. Does Sheikh Hasina's case fall within these exceptions?
Well, I think, first of all, any extradition treaty like the one we have between India and Bangladesh is a very detailed and complex legal document. So I think we have to approach the question of extradition first and foremost from the legal point of view. And let me tell you that at the moment we have absolutely no idea, because the government of India has not received any legal documents from Bangladesh. All we have received from them is last year in December a one-liner request about sending Sheikh Hasina back to Bangladesh, and now yesterday, after the death sentence was passed, then another request, now send her back. Now the death sentence has been passed, and saying that, we just, and somebody else, some minister, member, advisor of the Yunus regime said, if you don't send her back, there'll be more enmity between India and Bangladesh. How is that in any way relevant when you look at a complex legal issue like extradition? So when the formal request for extradition comes, these, as we know, all court documents have to be certified, stamped, etc., copies made. When all that process is completed by the Bangladesh government, they will presumably send these to the government of India with a very specific formal note verbal referring to the documents and saying that on this basis we want the extradition. When that happens, when the documents are received, it is the Indian government's duty to examine those documents. We have a very detailed and complex legal process, as you know, and in the examination of those documents, where even Sheikh Hasina is entitled to file a case in the Indian courts on the subject of her extradition. Somebody is saying, oh, she can go back now and apply for a review at the Supreme Court level, but doesn't carry any strength at all, because the moment she goes back, she'll be arrested and executed, because that's what the sentence says.
Right.
So I think that the question now is that, number one, to wait for the legal documents to come to India, to start the process of examining the legal documents. As I said, there could be even a legal examination in the courts, because there are so many clauses, and the issue of dual criminality is there. Does the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita, the new Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita, have a clause for crimes against humanity? Does it have a clause, for a death sentence for the issues on which Sheikh Hasina has been given the death sentence? This will certainly have to be examined by our experts. And once that is done, then the decision on whether you're going to accept the request for extradition or not follows from there. We know that from our own experience of handling extradition requests, which the Indian government has made to other governments, this process can last for years. It takes years, and you cannot just expect any yes and no answer when the government of India has not even had a look at the documents, at the legal processes, at the legal papers on the basis of which extradition is being requested.
You're right. We've sought extradition of so many individuals, written to so many countries. Some have been successful, some are still pending, about which we are still putting in more and more requests and papers, and trying to fulfill their conditions. Trying to understand that from your perspective as well, Dr. Bhattacharya, I saw you nodding your head. Perhaps you have a differing opinion on the options that India has as per international law on the functioning extradition treaty that we have with Bangladesh?
The main problem is, when the process of extradition starts, if what are the itineraries, like what is the situation in the country where the person in question is being extradited to? If the prison conditions is conceivable, his rights, his liberties will be protected or not. Now, if you already have an issuance or awarded a death sentence, then the question of extradition becomes a tad bit difficult, because now you already have awarded a death sentence without providing, the person has not been provided legal judicial situation. Like, she has not been represented in the court, whatever national, special, or in what tribunal it might be. She is not being represented. Now, she has already been awarded death sentence, and now you are seeking extradition. So that will take time for India to think that, can she be extradited in a situation like that, because she has taken recuse inside India, and she is a protective practically of India today. And can we send her back in that way, where she is practically awaiting death sentence over there? So that is something which we have to worry about, and that is something which it will take time. As Ambassador Sikri said, it will take time.
You're right, and what's ironic is that the trial took place in her absentia. The death sentence was pronounced while she was not there. But correct me if I'm wrong, Ambassador, but I was reading somewhere that now to file an appeal, to file a review, she has to be present in the country. We already know they've already handed her a death sentence, and persecution will be next. So given the volatility in our neighborhood, India has enough grounds, and also the exceptions that are there in the extradition treaty. We have enough grounds to either delay or refuse extradition. So, which means as an immediate aftermath, Sheikh Hasina does not have anything to worry about. But what next? What is the next legal cause of action, or what is it that she can plan for her future?
Well, Sheikh Hasina herself, while calling the process biased and rigged and absolutely done by a government that has no mandate and is non-democratic, has not been democratically elected. At the same time, Sheikh Hasina has clearly said that she is willing to defend herself, to present her arguments in any forum that is biased, that is unbiased, and that is free from any kind of vendetta or any kind of political rigging. She herself has mentioned the ICC, the International Criminal Court at The Hague, as one forum where she would be happy to defend herself. And we do know already that the legal representatives of the Awami League based in the UK have actually given what they describe as a notice to the prosecutor at the ICC in The Hague about the conditions in Bangladesh, about the treatment of the Awami League, about 400 people of the Awami League having died. I think this is a very important aspect because the biased nature of the Yunus regime has become more than evident in the fact that, number one, even when they asked the UN agencies, the UN Office of the High Commissioner, Human Rights Office and the High Commissioner for Human Rights, even when they asked him to do a report, they gave him a very limited time period from 15 July to 5th of August. And they said, do it for this. They never took into account all the terrible events that have happened after 5th August and more particularly after 8th August, which includes the attacks on the Awami League, attacks on policemen. 2/3 of all the police stations in Bangladesh were attacked, and the policemen were killed in the hundreds, and their weapons were looted from these police stations. And the Awami Leaguers have been arrested in large numbers. Some of them have died in jail. Not a single case or charge sheet has been filed against them in over a year. We know that the attack on the Hindu minorities, the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Christians, the Sufis, Ahmadiyyas, all these have taken place in large number. 2,000 attacks are documented in the first 15 days between 5th of August and 20th of August 2024. And even after that, it's continuing. So none of this has been documented. In fact, Mohammed Yunus keeps, when anybody asks him about the attacks on the minorities, on the religious minorities, including Sufis and Ahmadiyyas, all he says is, oh, this is fake news from India. This is all he says. So nobody has been charged for that. Now, all of this shows a completely biased mentality because knowing that how much guilt and illegal activities have been done after 5th August, the Yunus regime has given indemnity to all those involved in any act, before, during and after 5th August. So I think that from this you can judge that there is a highly biased and politically rigged situation. If Sheikh Hasina is ready to appear before an organization, an institution like the ICC at The Hague, well, let it be so. We don't know yet whether the ICC is going to, act upon the notice that has been received by the prosecutor for the ICC. We also know that many individual Bangladesh lawyers have filed notices with the ICC about the attacks on the minorities, on the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Christians, Sufis and Ahmadiyyas, and they've said that please, this should be looked at. So I can only surmise from this that this is very volatile situation. Still, I don't think that the death sentence has brought any finality to it, and that while it may impinge upon Sheikh Hasina herself going back to Bangladesh, but I think certainly the answer to this is that while all these legal examinations, etc., are going on, whether by the government of India, whether by the ICC, etc., the best thing for the Yunus regime would be to have a properly created caretaker government and to hold free, fair, inclusive, that is participatory and credible elections.
Absolutely.
And if
this verdict has come. Yes. Finish your point, Ambassador. Sorry.
I was just saying that if they do that, because that is what he has promised, right, in the early part of February before the month of Ramzan starts. And also we know that, another thing that Yunus has tried is to change the entire constitution of Bangladesh, bring in, he set up a whole lot of reform commission, they gave their report. He now wants to incorporate the report in the constitution of Bangladesh, but this has not been accepted by the president. And the president, in his presidential order, has said that the elections and the referendum for these reforms will be held on the same day. So that is the best process for Bangladesh to move ahead. And all the rhetoric and political invective coming out of Bangladesh that, oh, now we've got this decision, now you must send her back, etc., etc. This is completely neither here nor there because extradition is a very complex legal process.
Certainly. So what you've described to us not just explains that how this verdict is a setback to Sheikh Hasina and her party, the Awami League. It's also a huge setback, and the developments that have taken place since her government was overthrown during the 2024 protests. It's also in so many ways a setback for democracy in Bangladesh. We hope that when the elections take place as promised by the current regime in February, it will be free, fair and inclusive, upholding democracy, something that India has also expressed belief in. But the fact that given the current volatility, Dr. Bhattacharjee, and if this case drags on, there is divided opinion on, of course, the manner in which the protest took place. Sheikh Hasina had to flee from the country, and the changes thereafter. We've seen the radicalization that has taken place. We've also seen interference from Pakistan. The huge threat for India going forward could be that if this lingers on, there could be Bangladesh could become an arena for more and more strategic competition, perhaps even for countries like China. What is your view on that?
For India, it will be Bangladesh has been a country which has been extremely important for our neighborhood first policy. It has been a partner country, a country which has been a friend all through. And most of the leaderships, whatever, even if it is in the opposition, even in the past, we have seen that it has always been a close associate with in the developmental story of South Asia. Now, what is the situation today is different, but I cannot practically throw away the baby and the bathwater together and say that we cannot practically say take Bangladesh into the picture anymore. We have to wait, we have to watch. There are sane and sorted people in Bangladesh. There are people who care about the society, who care about the country, and for that reason, though practically the present interim government is not working as it's not an elected and democratic government, and we really it's worrisome that sometimes its decisions are not to the interests. It seems like it's not to the interests of the country of Bangladesh. But we can practically, there is a concept of wait and watch. We should not be practically taking decisions, or we have to see that where is Bangladesh, because it's a country which is, this is something which is taking place internally. We do not have any role to play. We do not have any hand to play. For that reason, we have to wait and see how the thing pacifies, because it has to take, the decision has to be from the people of Bangladesh. The people of Bangladesh has to take a role and practically say what is right and what is wrong. And that is where things will stay. They have to practically say what has been the history of Bangladesh, what is the origin of Bangladesh, and how Bangladesh has been there, or what started in 71 and what is 2025. If they can practically trace it back, that will be where Bangladesh will be able to benefit out of it. So rest of it, we will have to wait and watch. For India, there is not much role to play in practically saying that there will be people, there will be neighbors, there will be regional players who will be trying to play truant. But that's not what India has been, or that's not what the role of India has been in the past.
You're right, and we've invested so much in our partnership with Bangladesh over so many decades. So we only hope that democracy prevails, is back in the country once again, and the elections, when they're held, they perhaps pave the pathway to ensure stability and a democracy in Bangladesh. With that hope, we'll wrap up the conversation. Thank you once again, Ambassador and Dr. Bhattacharjee, for joining us on the program, sharing your thoughts, your views with us and our viewers. And to you viewers, thank you very much for your time as well.
To watch more programs of Sansad TV, subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to like and share them.